Good afternoon and welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Allie Joseph and my guest today is actor and newly minted director Paul Dano, whose film Wildlife stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Carey Mulligan. Known for roles from stage to screen, Paul started acting on Broadway when he was about 10, and later transitioned to film, where he played the object of a pedophile's attentions in L.I.E. and was later nominated for a BAFTA, very famously, opposite Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, playing a double role, I might add. More recently, he was nominated for the Golden Globe, playing musician Brian Wilson in Love and Mercy. And soon, Paul returns to Broadway with Ethan Hawke in True West. Welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for coming. I know you've been on the road with Wildlife and doing some. You got to speak to Terry Gross yesterday.
Went to Philly, spent the day, got to do Terry in person, which apparently not everybody gets to do, so that was nice.
That's an excellent invitation. What was it like for you?
It was actually kind of long and intense. I think we talked for about 90 minutes.
And she's right there, right?
I was exhausted. Yeah, she's right across. She was super sweet. And Zoe jokes that we just had a baby, and she jokes that the baby would recognize my voice, Zoe's voice, and Terry Gross's voice when it came out. That's because of how much
she probably does. Well, we're going to talk about the film, but now we'll skip ahead since you mentioned you are a new dad. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Are you getting any sleep?
We are doing well, but we are tired.
That's the state of things when you have a new baby. You have a daughter with your partner Zoe Kazan, and what kind of lessons have you learning from daddyhood so far? I know it's only 8 weeks,
oh
8-week-old daughter, and the man is here.
Well, I'll tell you, the event of my day was that our daughter had not taken a poop in 3 days.
Isn't it funny when that's like that becomes the highlight of your day?
It just started to rise up out of her pants.
Oh dear.
Onto her belly.
I have a tip for you.
It's incredible.
Size up in diapers.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Go bigger and just
then you don't
make
get.
it tight?
I know I said I wasn't going to curse, but then you don't get the poop up the back. I'm telling you, it's a winner. I have many tips. Ask me afterwards. So we'll talk a little bit more about fatherhood later. But I've heard you say, and tell me if this is true, that you wanted to make films before you became a director about family. Is that the case? And why are you drawn, if so, to family stories as a director?
Yeah, I mean, I've wanted to make films for a long time. And I think I always thought that would be a good place to start for me, because why not make a film about the most important thing in the world to you? That sort of seems like, where one should start. And it's always a subject matter that's given a lot back to me, whether it's like a Arthur Miller play or, a certain kind of film. Yeah, it's just the easiest place for me to put myself into.
And now being a family man, isn't that funny? It sounds like so 1950s, isn't it? I'm a family man. It is probably a lot more relevant to you as a dad. But your directorial debut, Wildlife, is also about a family. So tell us about the story and what drew you to it.
Yeah, so it's based on a Richard Ford novel called Wildlife. He's an incredible American writer. I was looking for another book of his to read, opened it up on the bookshelf in the bookstore, and immediately the first sentence and the first paragraph remain one of my favorites ever in a book. So I was just completely taken by the language, the setting, the time, the place, the characters, the feeling of memory and the American dream. And but really, I just had a sort of uncanny personal reaction reading this book. It was like great writing does that, where you feel like it's for you, and it felt like I was there, my parents were in there, even my grandparents felt like they were in there, and I felt sort of seduced by this feeling of the mystery of who our parents are.
And they are, and that's a good segue, because the film does raise many questions about parent-child relationships and what happens to kids when they realize that their parents are not perfect, because we're raised, our parents are deified, even if not intentionally, right?
Yeah.
And then inevitably, most people find out they're just humans too. So what do you want the audience to take away from this overall, and also in the smaller moments?
Well, I mean, for me, the film, We've All Got a Family, I find it so profound that family can go through heartbreak and tragedy, yet we're still family. Do you know what I mean? Like mother, father, child, it's sort of, even if your parents separate or divorce, it's still mom and dad. It's just sort of that deep. And so I hope you know, somebody's moved. You know, it's a tough question to answer because you're kind of trying to come up with like an answer, but honestly, I just hope somebody sees a piece of themselves in it. I hope people are moved, and I hope, you know, just to be sharing like a personal film.
And indeed, there's elements, as you say, of so many of our families in wildlife. I mean, the mother is struggling between being a stay-at-home mom and then needing to go back to work. I won't ruin the film, but out of necessity, and her own identity, which is a struggle that a lot of women I know go through after they have children and want to be in two places at once, and as well the dad and the sensibility of pride being heard and not being the provider and so on. So yeah, I think people will absolutely take that away. You did write the script over what appears to be 4 years. I understand it was not the only thing you and Zoe, his partner and mother of his child is Zoe Kazan, if anybody doesn't know, and a fine screenwriter. So you spent this time writing. What's your creative process since you're also a couple?
Yeah, so I sort of thought, because I wanted to make this film, that I would take a first stab at a script just to sort of get my feet wet in the material. And then as I was writing it, I sort of started to think, okay, this is pretty good, you know. So I wrote like a first draft, which I then gave to Zoe, and she just kind of tore it apart. And there was notes on every page. Every page was dog-eared, marker all over it. And we couldn't really get through more than 5 pages of notes. Because, you know, it's hard. And she was like, I see what you're trying to do. Why don't you just let me do a pass on this? And I was like,
put it down, honey.
Great.
Let me do it.
Yeah. Which was great, because she's a proper writer. This was my first time. Zoe's written plays, screenplays. And so she sort of brought a great sense. She was able to take structure and put it to use. She was also able to help it take a step away from the book. And I saw her draft, and I was like, okay, yeah, I see where we're going here. And then we just passed it back and forth. So we would talk for like, you know, 2 or 3 hours or something and just ask questions. And then one of us would take it and do a pass. So we sort of had a built-in editor for each other.
Well, that's great. I mean, you know, it's a collaborative process. It's very hard to work with somebody. I've co-written a book, and it is very difficult. So to then have a personal relationship.
Yes, I mean, the only way this worked was because we didn't write together. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if we'd sat at the computer together, that would be crazy.
Hours,
yeah,
just huddled over and criticizing each other.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't have had a baby.
Oh, yeah.
Done it that way. So. I imagine there isn't a woman around who doesn't love Jake Gyllenhaal, though I could be wrong. But Carey Mulligan's Jeanette, I think, is the character who really steals the movie because she's complex and kind of messy in the 60s, having to divide her attentions and her time between being mom and worker. So was it your choice, Zoe's, or yours together to write this nuanced character who's also strong?
Well, I don't think it was a choice. I mean, I think that's what it was. It began with the character in the book, who was mysterious and complex and complicated. I do think she's a bit different in the film, and part of the writing process was an attempt to sort of understand Jerry and Jeanette as a means of understanding something in your own life, of course. But I was in love with this character, Jeanette. She does some harsh things in the film, but I found her struggle to be completely relatable. I loved the feeling of not knowing if she was making an act of survival, if she was in crisis or having a breakdown, if she was enjoying it in moments, or is she just in pain and struggling. You know, like it's sort of like the weather. You know, it just keeps changing, and Carey had this incredible weather system inside of her that was constantly moving, and I think her performance is so beautiful. And to your point, I was really excited to see Carey get to do something more messy. That was sort of the instinct with her. You know, she's such a great actor, but I was like, let's see, I wonder if we were able to let Carey like have her shadows spill out, you know, what would that be like? And she was really excited by that too when she read the script, but she was partially excited about that because she just doesn't get the chance to ever do that, which I was kind of naively surprised by. meaning she feels like usually women are asked to be a more perfect version of themselves on screen, and that she's played parts where often they are scaling the character back in the post-production because the audience says, oh, they don't want to let a woman be unlikable, but often with men, sometimes our flaws can be even lionized sometimes. Do you know, so that was really an interesting sort of reflection back to me.
Right, because the character is either written to be a mess, like some sort of walking disaster, hot mess, or they are perfection.
Yeah.
And there's not much of a compromise typically. Now, I haven't read Ford's novel, which of course your film is based on, but is the story told there as well from the point of view of Joe the son, or did you and Zoe make any creative choices there?
Yeah, so the book is written first person, but looking back on it. So right from the outset, we were curious if we could write the script without voiceover, almost as a challenge. We didn't know, just because the prose is so beautiful, the language is so beautiful, it's very tempting to put it in the script. But we thought, let's make it present tense, let's experience this with the kid. And let's really, I think the power of it is sort of in the reveal of information through him, the Eden of childhood, and then sort of, and family, and the portrait, and then sort of peeling the layers back. And the other big challenge was that the book is largely internal monologue, so how do we take the feelings that that's giving us and make sort of an image or action out of it? Luckily, Richard Ford had said to me, my book is my book and your picture is your picture, and you gotta establish your own values, and basically saying, do you. And that was an incredible sense of permission from somebody, you know, whose book you love and whose writing you admire. And absolutely our instinct was how do we take this beautiful book, Wildlife, and put ourselves through it and make our film.
Do books often touch you in that way, that you know, because you had said I think I read that you had wanted to write something original and had sort of worked and tossed ideas around, but this was really what spoke to you?
Well, I love books. There's probably a lot of books that could be a film or something, but why would you make it? Do you know? So this one for me had a why. Like I knew who I was in this, and even the language of the book met who I am taste-wise, and a certain kind of filmmaking that I love, in terms of making something just sort of essential, like strong in terms of its simplicity. That's just always something I've loved in art. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I hope I write something original someday. I hope I adapt another book. I hope, you know, I just feel like it's really about what's, you know, taking root in you at that moment.
And absolutely, I'm sure you will do both. If you are just joining us, this is, of course, actor Paul Dano, who is a new director of the film Wildlife. When does it come out?
It just came out in New York and LA,
okay,
and it's coming out in more cities this coming weekend and the following weekend.
Okay,
so depending where you are.
Can run out to the theater. We're not done yet, though. I did want to say, oftentimes we see you in these complex characters. Some of them are dark and some of them are complicated, but you also have this ironic, funny side, which we've seen. And there's a movie that I don't know if a lot of people saw, but Swiss Army Man.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like it because it's based on this sort of running fart joke, but it's much more complex than that. Elijah Wood?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe. Why am I Elijah Wood? But yeah, so somehow they have conflated the two. But yes, so it's a strange film, and yet it's sort of compelling as well. What made you want to do that? And by the way, this will set you up very well for fatherhood.
So let's see. There's a part of you that needs to go play in the woods, right? And you know, I don't often as an actor get to, you know, sort of be with the part of me that loves a fart joke. And
I'm there often.
Yeah, no,
clearly.
in life I am though. I mean, just in work, you know. So I feel like that's something where, I mean, I remember reading the opening 2 pages of that script and just going, holy shit, this is incredible. It's incredible. When he's riding the corpse, as a fart jet ski across the ocean. I mean, it's sublime.
Sorry, we had to go there, folks. But it's
honestly,
fascinating.
I think it's sublime. I think it's gorgeous, and I think it's a film that has a lot to it. I think it's got a lot of heart, and I think it's about like letting your freak flag fly, you know, and not being afraid to be yourself, and I think it's just like a really good time.
And I have to add, Radcliffe, how did he get into that? I mean, you're not him, but I mean, you know, sort of we see you toting him around. Obviously, you're not really carrying him.
Well, I was.
The whole time?
Largely, it was him, except there's a few times where he gets dropped on a rock, and, you know, it's a dummy. No, and Daniel did most of that stuff himself. That was probably the best workout I've ever had was those 6 weeks.
Came out really buff, right?
Carrying Daniel Radcliffe through the woods.
How much did he weigh?
I don't know. I mean,
he's not a huge guy.
He's not a huge guy, but he's fit. And he was. I think he's incredible in the film. It's not an easy part. He, really went for it. And I think we had a good time. I mean, we were very intimate.
It looked like you had a really good time, and a fascinating film, Swiss Army Man, if you folks want to check it out. So has your perspective on male and female dynamics changed going back to fatherhood now that you have a daughter? I know it's new, but I find when I was a new parent, all this stuff goes through your mind that wasn't really concrete before. I think it was a little bit more esoteric. So what will you hope to teach her as you go along about being a strong woman once you get some sleep? Because I asked because I read somewhere that you said you wanted to figure out how to make her a critical thinker. I thought, wow, you're starting early.
No, I think that's misquoted. I think what I mean is something that I found interesting is like learning how to think and be curious, I meant, rather than, right, like what's education if it's just learning facts or something. It must have been a conversation where I was like, I want, I think it's important to ask questions about the world, and so I don't mean critical, like the word like critical, looking down on some,
I don't think, I don't think that's what they meant. I think they meant to be introspective, to be thoughtful, to be.
Yeah, but more, I think probably the most important thing, honestly, is letting her tell us who she is and what she's like and what she's interested in. She's only 8 weeks old, so we're not we're not thinking that far ahead yet, and she's got the best role model she could ask for in Zoe, and hopefully I'll hold up my end of the the bargain. And it's interesting, the question, because sometimes you hear, this is something that I know Zoe in particular feels, but you hear people say, like politicians, and stuff like, oh, I have a daughter, and it's like, yeah, I mean, yes, it's totally game-changing in terms of my perspective, just having a kid, but like, in terms of a strong woman or women's rights or all this, like, yeah, you had a mom too. We have a mom, we've had girlfriends, friends, co-workers, like, it shouldn't take having a daughter to move the needle in terms of, how you feel about women. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're so right, but I had to ask. So soon, switching back to your performance work, so you've now you're a director, and you'll continue in that vein, I'm sure, but not setting acting aside, you'll be back on Broadway soon, I understand, with Ethan Hawke in the classic True West. So how does that ramp-up process of tech and rehearsals native to theater versus film, how is that for you? Is it exciting? Is it exhausting?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think it will be exhausting. I'm scared too. It's a great play. Ethan and I have known each other for a long time. He's a great actor, and I think that's part of the turn on. Is sort of putting yourself out there, working with incredible but challenging material, working with another great actor, getting back up on stage, which I haven't done in quite some time. Last year I spent about 6 months doing a limited series. It's going to come out on Showtime later in November, a prison escape story. And coming out of that, not only did I need a long rest, but a 6-month shoot is kind of long. And I couldn't ask for anything better than getting to go do a play to sort of challenge you, reinvigorate, and shake up your own process. Because part of the fun is continuing just to like learn. You know, it's one of the nice things that this kind of work offers me. You know, you're always in a new playground or a new subject matter or new partners, you know, to work with, and so much about it is that sort of new experience and what makes you a little bit scared and excited, and just sort of meeting that challenge.
Right, because unlike film or TV where there's more takes unless it's live, like, oh, I said that thing on stage, kind of like here. Yeah. Oh, I can't do that over, but then you get to go home and ruminate on, hopefully not too much, like how can I tweak this, can I make it better? Yeah. And that's a great opportunity, I would think, for an actor.
I think so, and yeah, you're right, you don't have a parachute on stage. You don't have a safety net in terms of the next take, and it's really can be thrilling to just be out there, and sort of living in that moment for 2 hours. It's really exciting.
I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I want to come see it. Last question, best tip for a creative talent like yourself who doesn't know whether, unlike yourself, to focus on acting, writing, or directing?
Well, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, first of all, being an actor is hard. I can't tell you when you're starting out, for young people, how many auditions you go on that you're just not going to get. And it's a crazy business. There's things I love about all of them. I hope that I have the sort of privilege of being able to follow the scent, so to speak, and I do think you have to do what excites you and what gets you off and what feels important and vital. You also have to pay your rent. You have now I have a kid. So much of it is about figuring out who you are, right? Meaning it's so easy to think you have to be something, or it's really good to try on all sorts of different hats and slowly cook it down and be like, okay, no, I work this way. Acting makes me happy, or writing or directing, or this pays my bills, or a lot of it is just stumbling around and figuring it out.
All right, you heard it from Paul Dano, who's here. Thank you for joining me today. Yeah. He'll be appearing on Broadway in True West. I believe you're in previews December 27th. That's
sounds
what
soon.
I read. Sounds
true.
Soon.
That's
sounds
right.
Soon.
That's
so
correct.
He'll be rehearsing, but in the meantime, you can check out his new film and directorial debut, Wildlife, which is in theaters in New York and LA, and will hit the rest of the country shortly.
This weekend and next weekend.
This weekend and next.
Let's do it.
And next weekend.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look forward to seeing that, and especially True West, and congratulations on your daughter.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, get some sleep. Have a great afternoon, everyone.